Hi, and welcome to Thoughts from the Midlife. Today I'll be talking about last night's round one NFL draft. We'll have a little recap of that and also a little view into today's round two and three draft. As you know, if you listen to my podcast or watch the vlog, you know I'm a Cowboys fan. You can see behind me there we have a wall of some of my favorite players: Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Bob Lilly, Darren Woodson, and I have a little Tony Romo back there too. So at least four of these guys are in the hall. Hopefully Woody will be in the hall soon, and it would be nice if Tony made it someday. I was at the Hall of Fame last year at the Hall of Fame induction in Canton. I went with my buds Louie and Kike, and Kike is a big Steelers fan, so it was a big Steelers weekend. But for me, it was really important because Drew Pearson got in and Cliff Harris got in. Two of the guys that I watched growing up as a little kid. And I was always hashtagging Drew and Cliff to the Hall. I even got to talk to Gil Brandt on his podcast one day, and we were talking about Cliff Harris and how he belonged in the Hall of Fame along with Drew Pearson. And now those two are in. I think, and I hope that Woody's next. And if Tony Romo ever makes it in during my lifetime, I will do my best to be there. Hopefully this time I won't get a gout in my foot. Last time I was limping around, Louis and Kike were all waiting up for me. It was pretty cool. It's a great experience if you're an NFL fan and you have um, a diehard mentality about your team. I highly recommend going to the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. It's a great experience. But back to the draft. The draft was very interesting. It's an unusually non-quarterback heavy draft. There was only one quarterback drafted in the first round. Kenny Pickett going to the Steelers. My friend Kike was very happy. I'm not sure why. I mean, it was a cool story. The kid was crying his eyes out. He's a Pittsburgh kid, played his football at Pitt. Is gonna, like they said, he's only moving locker rooms, so now he'll be in the big game. So in the big locker room, he played his college ball there. You know, the knock on Pickett was that his hands were a little small. Lewis Riddick was making an interesting observation last night and was saying that the guy's hands are small, but he's got some weird, I wouldn't call it a deformity, but his joint bends different than most hands. So he can actually wrap the ball better than most people. And it's going to be to his advantage. The guy plays with a glove. I mean, he's from Pittsburgh. It's like he went from Miami to Pittsburgh. You know, the guy's used to the cold weather. He's used to that style of football. You know, hopefully he has a nice career. So he was the only quarterback picked. There was lots of receivers picked. I think there were six. Lots of defensive players picked. Five first round kids from Georgia. Five of them. It could have very easily been six, but Nakobe Dean will probably be one of the first few players picked off the board in the second round. So to the Cowboys we go. They drafted Tyler Smith, tackle from Tulsa, and it looks like he'll be kicked inside to guard, play left guard next to Tyron. So Tyron is Smith, Tyler is Smith, and the center is Tyler. So go figure, right? Weird coincidence. Kind of the quirky things that I like about sports, and I'm always boring my poor wife to death with stuff like that. Now the line on Tyler Smith is that he's powerful. He is really quick. He's very strong. Has very strong hands. Once he gets his hands on you, you're in trouble. The problem that I see is that and he's got really long arms, which is good for the NFL. He Mel Kiper called him a penalty waiting to happen. And if that were the case, we'll just keep Connor Williams. This kid had 14 penalties in 12 games this past year. The previous year he had seven. The previous 2 years he had seven combined, but last year for whatever reason he was getting flagged a lot. Some of it was for post play action, which is kind of good that he's got that little nasty streak to him. But at the same time, if you watch some of his film, his big problem is that his footwork isn't down pat, and when that happens, you get out of position, and it's natural to start grabbing. You know, you don't want your quarterback hit. You definitely don't want your $40 million guy in Dak getting hurt because you blew your assignment. So you grab, and that's what this kid does. You know, you can see his hands are just they're just out of place, right? Unfortunately, he gets out of place and he grabs on the outside, And that's when holding gets called most of the time, when the hands are on the outside. There's holding on almost every play. On almost every play, there's holding. But that's when you keep your hands inside, and that's actually better for your leverage. Pad level and leverage and hands inside for an offensive lineman is what will help you gain an advantage to these super quick, super fast, super strong defensive ends that can run just as fast sideways as they can standing straight up. So he's going to really have an issue to that. Now, Jerry Jones is saying, we can coach that out of him and all the stuff. And of course, like any other draft, he's going to say he's the guy we wanted. He's the guy we focused on. He even showed his war room sheet with his list of players to prove that they had Tyler ranked higher than Zion Johnson and Kenyon Green. First of all, it's stupid to be showing your list to anybody else. As it is, it seems like everybody who drafts for the Cowboys fleeces them. They got a fifth for Amari, a fifth for Amari Cooper, when they gave up a first round for this guy. So apparently they tried to trade back with the Titans, whatever. It didn't work, so they stuck at 24, and they took Tyler Smith. I hope I'm wrong, but it just feels like a reach here. It feels like a reach on a guy that was kind of consensusly looked at as a second round guy. Would he have been there at 56? Maybe, but if he's not there, you have other guys. You've got Parham from Memphis. You have Ingram from LSU. You've got Kennard from Kentucky, which may be possibly third round guys, but wouldn't it have been better to strengthen that defense a little bit? When you have kids like Jeremiah Johnson that went to the Jets after, you have that kid Devin Lloyd who looked like he's going to be a really good linebacker. You could have drafted Dean. You could have strengthened your secondary. Who knows what's going to happen with Kelvin Joseph? Who knows what's going to happen with his legal problems and that murder that he was in that car for? Did he do the right thing for himself and speak up? Does the guys he was with, did they act out of line and without him knowing? It's kind of hard to tell, right? But either way, it casts a shadow over what's going to happen with that secondary. The Cowboys were expecting that guy to step into that cornerback 2 role. He's got all the tools for it, but he kept getting hurt last year. He got COVID. He had all kinds of stuff. I mean, he had off-field stuff. That's why he left LSU for Kentucky. So now the Cowboys don't look as bad for not letting go of penalty Brown, and still having him and Jordan Lewis, but they could have drafted Braxton Hill and strengthened their safety group, strengthened their cornerback group, given them a big guy who was the second-round safety on the board after Kyle Hamilton. So instead of providing depth to that, wouldn't a linebacking crew of Micah, Devin Lloyd, and Jabril Cox, or Micah, Nakobe Dean, and Jabril Cox been better than those two and Leighton Vander Esch? Granted, Leighton's a veteran, and he had a great rookie season, but he just hasn't been the same guy. After that neck injury, he has not been the same guy. Last year when they drafted Micah, they were set with Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. They thought, hey, we've got a rookie, we've got 2 veterans that have both made the Pro Bowl, and Jalen didn't even finish the season with the Cowboys. Jabril Cox got hurt. So why not strengthen that room? Why not make that defense stronger? The saying about defenses win championships, right? The Cowboys are always knocked about, they always go for the flash, the offensive player. There wasn't a guy there for them, so they didn't. But why not defense? And then look to draft this type of player in the second round. Will McClay is a pro. He's probably, other than the Ravens, built the best rosters through the draft than any other team. The Cowboys have shown that they're not going to spend in free agency. Their formula is no big signings in free agency because they don't want to give up compensatory picks. So there'll probably be movement after the draft for what's considered a June 1 cut. So there may be some movement there. But they could have addressed that in free agency, gotten themselves a guard so that they don't have to draft for need. Drafting for need does not work, man. I mean, unless there's a perfect union of need and best player available, which doesn't happen that often, unless you're a team that has a bunch of holes on their team. But right now, unless we're apologists for the Cowboys have some holes. They lost Randy Gregory. They lost Amari Cooper. They lost Cedric Wilson. They lost Malik Turner, right? So they lost Connor Williams. They lost Lyle Collins. So they have needs. And yes, the offensive line is a glaring need. And hopefully this kid turns into a Ron Leary type of player, right? Because they were saying that he had a malformation in his legs when he was a boy, and they had to break his legs to set them so they would be straight. Hopefully, none of that rears its head back up at some point, and his athleticism and good coaching will coach that bad stuff out of him before the season starts. Playing next to Tyron Smith isn't going to hurt him. But they settled him with number 73. And 73 is Larry Allen, who is a Hall of Fame guard, possibly the best guard in NFL history. Definitely better than anybody on the field right now. And that includes Zach, who's on track to possibly be a Hall of Famer. So that was the first round. The drafting this young offensive lineman is going to be critical because the Eagles really helped themselves. In free agency, they signed Hassan Reddick away from the Panthers. He's a seasoned guy, a good pass rusher. They drafted Jordan Davis, who really showed out well at the combine. He had a good tape. He's a big run stuffer. They're going to put him right next to Fletcher Cox. Cox is on a 1-year deal, probably the tail end of his career, but he's still a load to handle. And well, not hopefully, not as a Cowboys fan, but from a player development, he's going to teach this kid a lot, right? The Commanders / Commodores have a great defensive line. They have Jonathan Allen. They have that kid Payne in their interior line. So they're going to be a problem for the Cowboys. The Giants help themselves. They drafted Kayvon Thibodeau, and granted, this kid won't be matched up against them, but he'll be matched up against that kid Lawrence that they got from Clemson a couple of years ago. So just in those games, those 6 games, they're gonna have their hands full. So the Cowboys, I think, didn't help themselves last time, not in the way that they could have. Hopefully, the second round will bring more of a bounty to them, and they'll make up a difference. And this won't be a draft that goes, but really, the Cowboys' best round is the first round. Second round has been just so. There have been some guys who turned out to be bust, but then also you have DeMarcus Lawrence, who's a second round guy, and Trey Diggs, who did pretty well last year, right? So the Cowboys have a chance, possibly, if they feel enough of a need to move up in day 2. They're drafting at number 56, and at the top of the order, you have players like Nakobe Dean, Andrew Booth, Arnold Ebiteki, David Ajabo, who would be a project because he's hurt, but he would have been a first rounder for sure. You have a cornerback, Kyler Gordon. You have an Nboye Mafe from Minnesota. You have a very interesting pair of wide receivers. Christian Watson from North Dakota State was a big, long guy who was really fast. And if you look at Coach McCarthy, when he was with the Packers, they drafted Jordy Nelson in the second round, right? They drafted Devontae Adams in the second round. So they're more a second-round wide receiver guy drafting group. And maybe the Cowboys can do something to move up to take those guys, or George Pickens. Maybe look to Alec Pierce, the receiver from Cincinnati. Maybe in a third-round look at that kid David Bell from Purdue, who reminds me a lot of Michael Gallup. You'll probably see some quarterbacks start coming off the board, hopefully not to the Cowboys. You'll see Malik Willis, who was projected to be the first rounder. A lot of guys had him as the top quarterback on the board. You have Desmond Ridder. You've got Sam Howell. You've got Bradley Zapp from, I think it's Western Kentucky. You also have Carson Strong from Nevada. So there are some good second-round quarterbacks there, right? Defensive backs, Roger McCreary, and Matt Corral, who apparently some stuff came out about him having some off-the-field stuff, and maybe that's why he wasn't considered as a first-round guy. But the more quarterbacks they draft, the better the talent they push towards the Cowboys, I believe. You have secondary guys, McCreary from Auburn and Petre from Baylor. You've got a tight end, Trey McBride, in the second round. Maybe he's your guy. I think they probably wait to the third or fourth round. That player from, I think it's Virginia Tech, Jalen Woods, possibly is where he's from. He looks like he's an interesting guy. Defensive end, Drake Jackson. Interior lineman, Perrion Winfrey. You've got the linebackers, Asamoah from Oklahoma. You have a receiver, John Mechie from Alabama. So there's definitely players in the second round that are in play, like kid Fedarian Mathis. Um, the defensive tackle from A&M, DeMarvin Leal, doesn't look like maybe he's the guy, but there's definitely more talent left. So hopefully we'll see some movement in the second round. The Cowboys will make some noise and do something positive. And I know a lot of the fan base was not happy with the draft last night. So, and I know they don't draft for the fans. I know that's not the way it happens. And none of us are front office people. There are people like me who actually watch a lot of film, watch a lot of tape, keep an eye on the draft year round. I'm not saying I'm Mel Kiper, but I'm more than just a casual fan. And for me, the draft is a lot like the Super Bowl. I gear up for it all year. It's really interesting to me. I love all the stories about the players, their backgrounds, the start to their lives. It's really cool when you see them with their families and how excited they get. Seeing a player like Kenny Pickett get drafted by his hometown team is really cool. And that's what keeps me watching. I've been watching all the way back to the early 90s when they started broadcasting it. Is when I started to watch it. As far back as it goes, I've been watching it. And I still remember, even as a kid, I would look at the newspaper and watch the draft the next day on the newspaper. So this isn't just a passing thing for me. I'll sit and enjoy it with my wife tonight, and I hope you enjoy the draft and that your team does well, just not better than the Cowboys. So that's thoughts from the midlife, episode 3. Talk to you all soon. Have a great day.